Hey everyone, how are you all doing today? I hope you're taking a moment to breathe, to sit with your coffee, maybe let the day settle in a little before we dive into this story. Because baby, if you are Sean Diddy Combs right now, it seems like you're living in a storm of your own making. The walls are closing in, and for the first time in a long time, the man who once ruled the spotlight is sitting alone, facing the silence he used to drown out with music, parties, and power. They say when the noise fades, truth walks in. And right now, Diddy's truth looks like fear, confusion, and maybe, just maybe, regret. Inside those gray prison walls, he's not just losing sleep. He's losing trust, losing people, and losing that sense of control that used to make him feel untouchable. His mind, they say, has turned against him, whispering doubts that never stop. It's one thing to be surrounded by enemies. It's another when you start thinking the ones closest to you might be part of the reason you fell. Now, people close to him are saying he's in a paranoid meltdown. And if that's true, it's not hard to understand why. When someone like Diddy, who's spent decades building a kingdom out of fame and money, suddenly finds himself locked away, with only a handful of people managing his life from the outside, paranoia can come easy. Imagine it. One day you're sitting in a penthouse with the world at your feet, and the next, you're in a cell where every sound echoes and every voice might carry a secret. They say he doesn't trust anyone anymore. Not his friends, not his business partners, and not even his legal team. He feels like the people who were supposed to protect him might have just been cashing in on his downfall. You see, when a person goes from being surrounded by yes-men and constant praise to being alone with their thoughts, every shadow starts to look like betrayal. And that's where Diddy is right now, second-guessing everything, reliving every handshake, every deal, every "don't worry, we got you." What's worse, he's realizing how fast loyalty fades when the fame dries up. His lawyers, who once moved mountains for him, now just move paper, and it's costing him millions. And when you're sitting behind bars, you start to wonder if all that money ever really bought you protection, or if it only bought you people who smiled while you paid. They say he's pacing in that cell, muttering that everyone ate off him. Everybody got full while he starved. It's the kind of bitterness that doesn't go away overnight. For years, he was the one who gave opportunities, who made stars, who fed entire industries. But now that the lights are gone, so are the people. The same hands that reached out for his money won't reach out now when he needs comfort. He's seeing that fame was never friendship, it was a business. And now that business is closed. The talk in the streets says that Diddy's paranoia runs deep. He's convinced that his lawyers promised him too much, that they told him he'd never spend a night behind bars, that everything was under control, that the worst was behind him. And when that promise broke, something inside him broke too. It's hard for a man who's lived his whole life being in control to suddenly realize that nothing, money, status, or charm, could save him from consequence. It's not just anger he's feeling, it's disbelief. How could people who sat across from him at dinner, called him brother, and managed his every move suddenly be the ones he suspects of betrayal? Maybe they didn't plan it that way. Maybe things just went wrong. But when you're locked up, every disappointment feels like a setup. Every bad outcome feels like a knife in the back. And for Diddy, it seems like every day brings a new thought, a new suspicion, a new what if. What if they lied? What if the money was gone before the case even ended? What if the people he trusted were just using him all along? You have to understand, Diddy's mind was trained to see power plays everywhere. For decades, his whole life was a chessboard: who to trust, who to promote, who to cut off. But now there's no chessboard. Just a man sitting in a cell, replaying his life like a movie with no happy ending. They say he can't even eat right. He barely touches the prison food. Some nights, he's up till dawn, talking to himself, trying to make sense of it all. He's realizing that for the first time in his life, nobody's listening. No assistants, no publicists, no cameras. Just him and the walls. That silence must be deafening for someone who lived on applause. And then there's the heartbreak, watching the people he thought cared fade into the background. His music partner, his so-called protege, the one he believed would keep his name alive in the world she's struggling herself. Her career hasn't bounced back since their last project together, and now, even she's keeping her distance. Maybe she's hurt, maybe she's scared, or maybe she's just moving on. But to Diddy, it feels like another goodbye in a long line of them. He probably remembers when she used to call him every day, when they'd talk about plans, dreams, and the next big thing. Now those calls are gone, replaced by silence, rumors, and lawsuits. The man who once made other people's dreams come true is now watching his own crumble. That's the cruel truth about fame. It gives you the world, but when it takes it back, it doesn't leave you much to hold on to. Inside, they say he keeps replaying conversations with his lawyers, those meetings where they'd smile and tell him not to worry. He's asking himself, were they lying or did they just not know? It's hard to say. Maybe they were too confident. Maybe they just told him what he wanted to hear. But whatever it was, that blind trust turned into bitterness. When you feel like everyone you counted on has taken a piece of you, what's left? For Diddy, it's fear, and that fear has turned into paranoia. He's even said to believe that some of the people who used to work for him might be working against him now, leaking stories, spreading gossip, painting him in a darker light than he already stands in. It's the kind of worry that eats at your soul. And if you've ever been betrayed by someone close, you know exactly what that kind of pain feels like. It's heavy, it's lonely, and it makes you question if you ever really knew the people you trusted most. They say that he talks to the guards sometimes, trying to get information, trying to find out who's visiting, who's calling, who's talking about him. But no matter what he hears, it never brings peace. The problem isn't what people are saying, it's what he's feeling. He's trapped not just in a cell, but in his own mind. The fame that once shielded him now feels like a curse. He can't hide behind the spotlight anymore. He can't buy silence, and he can't charm his way out of isolation. That's the thing about downfall. It strips you to the bone, leaving only truth and regret behind. And maybe deep down, he knows that some of this is his own doing. Maybe that's what hurts the most. Because when you've spent your life building walls of pride and power, it's hard to face the fact that those walls were made of glass all along. And now that they've shattered, Diddy's sitting in the ruins, trying to piece together what went wrong. Was it the fame? The greed? The people he surrounded himself with? Maybe it was all of it. But right now, he's not the mogul, not the artist, not the man on top of the charts. He's just another soul trying to understand how everything he built disappeared overnight. It's a sad, sobering reality, and one that a lot of us, especially those who've lived long enough to see how life humbles everyone, can understand. Sometimes, it takes losing everything to realize what really mattered. And maybe, just maybe, this is Diddy's moment of reckoning. The moment when the man who had it all finally has to sit still and face himself. There's a strange kind of quiet that comes after the storm, and for Diddy, that quiet feels like punishment all on its own. They say that prison nights are long, not just because of the darkness, but because of the thoughts that never stop coming. Every creak in the walls, every echo in the hallway feels like a memory knocking on his mind. The same man who once couldn't sleep without a phone buzzing beside him, or a studio full of people working on beats till dawn, now lies awake on a narrow bed with nothing but the hum of fluorescent lights for company. Sometimes he paces the small space, replaying old conversations, old songs, old promises. He's living in rewind, trapped in a movie that won't stop playing. That's the thing about losing everything. You finally start to hear the echoes of the past. They say he mutters names sometimes, the names of those who were once closest to him, asking questions that will never be answered. It's the sound of a man trying to rewrite his own ending, even when the ink has already dried. People who've seen him say he's thinner now. His face doesn't carry the same spark it once did, and his eyes look distant, like he's staring at something that isn't really there. Maybe it's guilt, maybe it's fear, or maybe it's just the weight of time catching up to him. You see, for years Diddy lived life like a race, faster, louder, bigger, always chasing the next headline, the next deal, the next performance. But now the race is over, and he's left sitting at the finish line, wondering what it was all for. That's a question a lot of people face when the world finally slows down. What was all the chasing worth? The cars, the houses, the fame, it all fades when you're left with only yourself. And that's what Diddy is facing right now, himself. The version of him that can't hide behind designer clothes or flashing cameras. The real man underneath all the success stories. The one who's been trying to remember when life started feeling like survival instead of joy. They say he still talks about the people he trusted. His lawyers, his team, the ones who handled everything for him. He believed they were his safety net. But now he thinks they were just waiting for him to fall. Every day, he seems to convince himself that someone played him, someone took advantage, someone whispered false promises just to keep him paying. It's sad, really, because trust is a fragile thing. When it breaks, it takes your peace with it. And in Diddy's case, it sounds like that trust was the last thing holding his world together. You can almost imagine him sitting at that cold metal table, staring down at the paperwork, thinking of all the money that vanished, wondering where it went and who's spending it now. For a man who built his empire on control, losing that control must feel like drowning. But here's the deeper truth. Maybe he's not just angry at them. Maybe he's angry at himself. Because deep down, he probably knew that fame attracts people who don't always have your best interests at heart. He's been in this business long enough to see it happen to others. Maybe he thought he was smarter, stronger, different. But nobody's immune to being used, especially when they believe they're untouchable. The same pride that built his empire might have been the thing that blinded him. And now, sitting in that small cell, he's starting to see it. They say he spends hours staring at the wall, lost in thought. Maybe he's thinking about the deals he made, the people he pushed away, or the bridges he burned. Maybe he's realizing that somewhere along the way, he stopped being surrounded by friends and started being surrounded by business partners who smiled as long as the money flowed. The irony is painful. Diddy, who once made others feel small just to stay in power, now feels small himself. It's a cruel mirror, the kind life loves to hold up when it's teaching you a lesson. They say he's becoming more spiritual, talking about fate, karma, and the idea that maybe everything happens for a reason. It's not unusual. When people lose control, they reach for meaning. Maybe this is his version of that. Maybe this is the part of his story where he starts looking inward for answers instead of outward for applause. Some people say he prays now. Not the showy kind of prayer he used to post online, but quiet ones. Private moments where he just whispers to something bigger than himself, asking for forgiveness, or maybe just for peace. Because at the end of the day, even the strongest people need someone, or something, to lean on. Still, the paranoia hasn't left him. They say there are nights he wakes up startled, thinking he heard someone outside his cell. He worries about being set up, about being targeted, about people coming for him even in there. Whether those fears are real or imagined doesn't even matter anymore, because to him, they feel real. Fear doesn't care about facts, it feeds on imagination. And Diddy's imagination has always been powerful. It's what made him a visionary in the music world. Now, that same imagination is turning against him, painting shadows where there might be none. It's a sad twist of fate, his greatest gift becoming his biggest curse. He used to create worlds out of sound. Now he's creating fears out of silence. There are rumors that sometimes, in moments of calm, he'll start talking about redemption. He says things like, "When I get out, I'm going to rebuild," or "I'm going to tell my story the right way." Maybe he believes that the world will still listen when he speaks again. But people who've been watching him for years know that rebuilding isn't just about coming back. It's about changing. And it's hard to tell if Diddy really understands that yet. Because even though his empire fell, his habits haven't fully left him. He still carries that pride, that I'm untouchable attitude, even in the smallest ways. Maybe it's the only thing he has left to hold on to. Pride can be both a shield and a prison of its own. The ones who visit him say that sometimes he talks like everything will be fine, like this is just a chapter and not the whole book. He laughs, tells stories, reminisces about the old days, the music videos, the tours, the nights when the world screamed his name. But then, just as quickly, his tone changes. His eyes go cold, and he starts asking if they've been talking to his team, if they've heard what people are saying, if they've noticed anyone acting strange. It's a heartbreaking shift, from charm to suspicion in seconds. It shows how fragile he's become, how deeply the trust has been broken. And once trust breaks, no amount of fame can buy it back. They say the guards don't know what to make of him. Some feel sorry for him. After all, he's a man who had everything. Others just see another inmate, no different from the rest. That might be the hardest thing for Diddy to accept, that here he's just a number, not a name. No entourage, no cameras, no applause. Just another person waiting for time to pass. The irony is, that's something he never learned how to do. Diddy's life was built on movement. He didn't wait, he made things happen. But now, waiting is all he can do. Waiting for letters, for visits, for news that might never come. It's in that stillness that life teaches the hardest lessons. The kind you can't buy your way out of. For older listeners watching this unfold, it's easy to feel a mix of sympathy and disappointment. We've seen stories like this before, stars who had everything, only to lose it all when they stopped listening, stopped caring, or stopped seeing the warning signs. Maybe that's why this story feels so familiar. Because behind the headlines and the drama, it's really about something universal. The danger of forgetting where you came from and who you are. Diddy might be the headline now, but his story is a mirror held up to all of us. It asks the same question life always does. What are you really left with when the spotlight fades? For Diddy, that answer is still unfolding. And from what it sounds like, the next few months will tell us whether he learns from this or lets the paranoia consume him completely. There's a point in every downfall when the noise fades and you can finally hear the truth. For Diddy, that truth is hitting harder than ever. The same man who once filled stadiums with sound now lives in silence that feels heavier than chains. Some nights, he sits by the small window in his cell, staring out at the yard lights, watching them flicker in the distance. It's a dim kind of glow, nothing like the bright flashes of the cameras that once followed him everywhere. But maybe that's the point. Life has a way of dimming the light around you, so you can finally see what's been inside you all along. They say Diddy spends more time thinking now than talking. He used to talk his way out of everything, arguments, deals, even pain, but there's no one left to talk to. And when you can't talk your way out, all that's left is to face yourself. People who've been near him say he's different these days. Not calmer, not wiser, just quieter. There's a difference. Quiet doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it's just exhaustion. They say he looks like a man carrying memories heavier than his sentence. He's been through betrayals, broken trust, fading fame, and now he's facing something even more painful. Himself without the mask. That's a hard mirror for anyone to look into. All those years of being the man in charge, the man everyone wanted to be around, the man who could make or break careers, it's all gone. And now he's realizing how much of that was built on fear, not love. People feared losing his favor. They feared his power. But they didn't love him. Love doesn't vanish when money does. Fear does. And that's what he's learning slowly, painfully, in that quiet place where no one claps anymore. There are whispers that he talks to himself sometimes, not out of madness, but out of longing. Longing for the old days, for laughter, for the comfort of knowing people still cared. He asks questions out loud that no one answers. Where did I go wrong? Who really had my back? Why did they all leave? It's the sound of a man trying to understand a lifetime of decisions. And maybe that's what this chapter of his life is really about. Understanding. You can't fix what you don't face, and for the first time, he's facing it all. Every mistake, every broken relationship, every moment when pride made him deaf to good advice. He's seeing now that power without peace isn't worth much. Because when the lights go out and you're left alone, it's not the applause you miss. It's the simple human connection you took for granted. They say Diddy has started writing again, not songs this time, but letters. Some are to family, some to old friends, some to people he heard along the way. Whether he ever sends them or not, no one knows. But maybe writing is the only way he can still feel in control. Words used to be his gift. They built his empire. Now they're all he has left to make sense of what's left of that empire. It's strange, isn't it? The same words that made people dance now carry his regrets. There's talk that he's been reflecting on how quickly the world moves on. He used to think his name would always carry power, that people would wait for his next move. But the world doesn't wait. The world moves on to the next story, the next sound, the next star. And that realization has cut him deeper than any headline could. Because what he's realizing now is something every person who's lived long enough understands. No matter how bright your moment is, time has a way of humbling us all. Some say that, in a strange way, this fall might be the first honest chapter of Diddy's life. Fame gave him a mask, money gave him walls, but loss gave him truth. When you have nothing left to protect, you finally start being real. Maybe that's why he's starting to talk about change, about becoming a better man, about finding peace. Whether he means it or not, time will tell. But it's clear that something inside him has shifted. They say he prays before bed now. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. Simple prayers, asking for forgiveness, strength, and maybe a little mercy. It's a small act, but it means something. Because when a man who once believed he could do anything finally admits he needs help from something higher, that's a step toward humility. And humility is something fame rarely teaches you until it's too late. The older folks watching all this unfold can probably see a lesson that younger ones might miss. Life isn't about how high you climb, it's about who you become while you're climbing. Diddy spent his life chasing the top, but somewhere along the way, he forgot to keep his soul intact. Now that he's stripped of everything, the question is whether he can rebuild it. Not the brand, not the image, but the man. Because redemption isn't about returning to the spotlight, it's about returning to yourself. Maybe that's the path ahead for him. Or maybe he'll fall deeper into the bitterness that's been chasing him. Either way, his story has already changed. The man who once thought he owned the world now knows what it's like to be owned by his own mistakes. And yet, in all this sadness, there's something strangely human about his story. It's the kind of story that reminds you how fragile we all are, no matter how big our names get. Fame can make a person forget the basics: kindness, gratitude, humility. It builds an illusion that you're untouchable, that you'll always be on top. But time and truth always win. Always. That's something people learn as they get older. You can run from a lot of things, but not from yourself. Maybe that's why so many older viewers connect to stories like this. Not because they enjoy seeing someone fall, but because they understand how easy it is to lose your way when life gets too loud. They've seen it happen, in family and friends, maybe even in themselves. Diddy's story isn't just about fame. It's about what happens when success outgrows your soul. They say that some mornings he looks out the window and just whispers, "I get it now." Maybe he does. Maybe he's starting to see that all the power, all the headlines, all the noise, it never really meant anything if it didn't come with peace. Maybe now he understands that the real empire isn't what you build in the world, but what you build within yourself. The world might never forgive him. The fans might never come back. But life doesn't always give you the ending you want. It gives you the ending you earn. And if Diddy can take this pain, this fall, this silence, and turn it into something real, maybe he'll finally find what he's been chasing all along. Not fame, not money, but meaning. Until then, the world will keep watching from the outside while he fights his battles on the inside. And maybe that's okay. Because some lessons aren't meant to be learned in public. Some are meant to be learned in quiet rooms, with only your thoughts for company. Diddy's journey isn't over yet, but it's taken a turn that no one, least of all him, ever expected. The man who once moved the world with his beats is now learning how to sit still. And maybe, just maybe, that stillness is exactly what he needed all along.